Hello and welcome to Chatty AF, the anime feminist podcast. Today is the second episode of our watch-along of the underappreciated gem Den-noh Coil. My name is Caitlin, and I am a writer and editor for Anime Feminist, as well as writing for the Daily Dot and my own blog, I Have a Heroin Problem. I'm joined today by Vrai and Peter.
Hi, I'm Vrai. I'm an editor for Anime Feminist. I also freelance all over the internet. You can find me on Twitter at WriterVry, and if you check out my pinned tweet, it has a whole bunch of information about where you can read my stuff. And you can also listen to my other podcast that I co-host at TrashPod.
And I'm Peter Phobian. I'm an Associates Features Editor at Crunchyroll and a contributor and editor at Anime Feminist. All
right. So today we are looking at episodes 7 to 13, up to the halfway point. And I just wanted to first check in and see if you guys have any general thoughts so far about this segment of episodes.
I think I'm old now. Because I know exactly how these kinds of series work, and I'm pretty sure I said it in the last episode that when you have a two-cour series like this that clearly has a lot of emphasis on world building and mysteries, that probably about the end of the first cour it'll introduce something really interesting and then spend most of the second cour interrogating that idea, which is exactly what this series of episodes did. And yet at the same time, I know that if I weren't watching this show for the podcast, I'd have dropped it within the first 6 episodes because I'm old and tired and shows take a long time to watch.
It's true.
That being said, I did like I liked the last 2 or 3 episodes of this run a lot.
Oh yeah, no, those last 2 and 3 episodes are honestly some of my favorite episodes of anime ever made.
I did think it was a bit strange, keeping with your kind of recipe for how these shows usually go, which I totally agree. That's how 24 episode series basically always play out. This one kind of introduced that thing with, I think, Kana's diary, and then just kind of went back to the daily life of hacking kids for the next 3 episodes. I'm not sure how I feel about that, because it kind of introduced there was like the twist or the big moment, and then it went back to kind of slice of life world building, as opposed to like waiting a couple more episodes, then transitioning to the second half, which would be mostly plot-related stuff, I guess.
I mean, it seems...
Right.
I think I can see what they're doing with it, because clearly there is some kind of stuff with death and loss and digital spaces as the ability to, like, hold on to things in the same way that sometimes you come across a deceased person's Facebook and it's really creepy. So, like, clearly there's stuff going on with Kana's digital footprint and Michiko and Isako's dead brother and all of that stuff, but it's not... That's clearly all second cour stuff, whereas this is... It's probably all going to tie into the really major overarching theme of this idea of digital sentience that most of the end of the first cour spends its time thinking about. So I think I get it.
Right, and I think it's kind of a slow burn.
It is a very slow burn.
I mean, it is a slow burn, but they do drop, for example, the Test of Courage episode, talking about Miss Michiko. Mm-hmm. Miss Michiko is actually very important to the show.
Yeah, it's been very confusing for me, because I just came off the Michiko and Hachi and Watchalong.
Yes, that is that Michiko.
All the kids are big Sayo Yamamoto fans.
I think they might be a little young for that.
I think in a few years, Fumie would be really into Sayo Yamamoto.
Agree. She's a good girl.
Or Isako. Isako, too.
Yes.
Isako, in, 6 years, would be a really good Sayo Yamamoto heroine, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I would watch that.
Oh, God. Sayo Yamamoto, Den-noh Coil.
Of the many things Yamamoto is good at, she's not very interested in writing about children. The kids in her show are always the least interesting part.
That's true.
So Hachin's kind of a take it or leave it situation.
But even the stuff that does not it does not directly affect the plot, has thematic resonance. I'll be real here. There's some foreshadowing going on.
You don't say.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. But anyway, so let's talk about this is a relatively episodic stretch. So it kind of makes sense to go through it episode by episode. So the first episode we watched for this, episode 7, was the Coil Detective Agency, with where Isuko sets up an elaborate trap to try to get an illegal, and ends up trapped in a room with Yasuko while Kyoko runs around not noticing that they need help. I know you don't like Kyoko, Vrai, but she's a very real fictional 6-year-old.
I believe that entirely.
And I think maybe the difference between you and me is that I like 6-year-olds.
Let's not make it a part of canonical podcast law that I hate children. I'm not very good with kids. They kind of wear me out. I do like Kyoko a lot. I find her a lot more endearing when she's hanging around with Daichi, and they have kind of similar energy levels. Like, that's much easier to watch.
Really well. And plus, there's not that, like, sisterly note with Yasuko, where, like, Yasuko sees her as annoying. Mm-hmm. Whereas, like, Daichi is just, like, this weird little kid who is hanging around him, but he doesn't seem as irritated by her.
Yeah, it is an excellent way of taking two characters I don't like very much on their own and making them a lot more interesting.
Yes, this was a really good stretch of episodes for Daichi and Kyoko. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the meat of this episode was probably, Isuko and Yasuko being trapped together, especially since they don't really interact very much for the next stretch of episodes.
Yeah, Isuko doesn't show up very much, all told, except for, like, 2 or 3 important scenes.
Mm-hmm.
She's kind of just hanging out.
Just hanging out on the sidelines. Well, because everyone's, like, farting around and she doesn't fart around. Mm-hmm. And they're on summer vacation. So they're not thrown together as much, and she's not really the type to, like, call them up and be like, hey guys, let's hang out and I'll boss you around, right?
Only because it's too much effort.
Yeah. That would involve initiating contact with other people. But I think Isuko and Yasuko have a very interesting dynamic, where Isuko is, it's a very obvious, like, two opposites sort of thing, but, like, Isuko is really cynical and Yasuko is very, like, optimistic, and you're getting a sense that they can both kind of see through each other. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I enjoy... I liked watching them play off of each other.
And when they're stuck together, they can sort of make it work.
Yeah, they're...
Well, they didn't kill each other, so...
They did not kill each other, it's true.
Works.
And it was Yasuko trying to pose so that Isuko could access the online and be like a human antenna.
That scene was much more interesting to me than literally every other crush scene in this stretch of episodes, where I quietly died.
The Daichi stuff?
Yes.
Oh yeah, that's a little annoying.
I say mostly because, they had that goofy one-off that means exactly nothing, where Isuko is being practical and Yasuko is being a 12-year-old with hormones who feels weird about strangers fussing with her arms and stuff.
Right.
But in reality, I do think it's an interesting dynamic because, Isuko is a very bossy person and Yasuko is a very go-with-the-flow kind of person, but that isn't the way they don't fall into the natural expected dynamic, where Yasuko is Instead, Yasuko is a little bit more forthright and willing to be pushy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and she's just, like, aggressively like, hey, friends are good. Don't you think friends are good?
It's super cheesy, but it's sweet.
It's not nice being all alone, and Izuko is just like, hey, how about you shut the fuck up, because I know that you've got some shit that you're trying to overcompensate for.
Yeah, that's... I had almost forgotten about that. I assume that we'll be coming back to that as well, since there's a lot of big, heavy, foreshadowy flashback stuff.
Yeah. Yep. Stuff in the behind the Torii gates.
Probably safe to go ahead and call that 4423 is also Isuko's dead brother.
Interesting prediction.
Just gonna throw that out there now because of conservation of narrative detail.
Yeah, they're certainly not letting us forget it, so.
Yeah. So, and plus, like, Isuko, like, she puts on, like, a front of, like, oh, I don't care about anyone, but she really, like, stepped up when Kyoko was in danger, right? Like,
oh, that was a good scene, and I liked it.
Mm-hmm.
And she seemed sad when, oh my god, what's the kid's name? Kyoko?
Kyoko.
Yeah, when she ran to her sister afterward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like, I think this show is really good about, like, giving its characters some complexity without being really heavy-handed with it.
And I mean, she's definitely that, oh, I really do want to have friends, but the plot and also my own hang-ups demand that I be an asshole. But she's not really loathsome about it. Like, she's not a Sasuke.
No, she comes across as someone who is, like, emotionally, like, an emotionally damaged 11-year-old. Because 11-year-olds are not nice, right?
Yeah, no, kids are terrible.
Like, 11 is about when kids are kind of, is an age, one of many ages, where kids are kind of jerks.
Mm-hmm.
It is not an age where they tend to be super empathetic to each other.
Well, has the plot demanded that she work alone or not let other people help her? Because I think Yasuko basically said, it seems like we're doing similar things. If you have a good reason for doing what you're doing, I'd help you out. And in fact, they are pretty much doing, well, I mean, we don't really know what Isuka's doing yet, but it probably involves a dead brother, and they're researching that guy's dead friend, so Haruken's dead friend. So
Kana.
I mean, in the basic sense that if Isuko wasn't so aggressively opposed to people helping her on things that require secrecy for the plot to move, then there would be no plot secrets. Yes, but
it also just it also seems to be like who she is, right? Like, it's not just plot demands it, but like she is not a person who works with other people.
Yeah, no, it doesn't feel contrived.
You know, there's no yelling at the screen like, if you would just work together, then you could, like, it doesn't feel that way. It feels organic for, like, in part of who she is. Like, it's very, like, well crafted that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a whiff of some parental abandonment issues there too.
Mm-hmm.
She visits her uncle.
Yeah. So, was that in this episode, or is that a little bit further forward?
A little bit.
That was after Kana's
later,
diary.
I think.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about the summer festival.
It's a good episode. It's just a kind of plot that I hate, because like, they're kids and it's fine and they're trying, and it doesn't feel like super contrived in the way a lot of romance school plots do. But also, I'm just dying inside because I don't enjoy those kind of stories.
Those het preteen crushes.
Yeah, like, preteen stuff feels so, like, I understand why these narratives work, because it does, your emotions are big and it feels big, and and so much of that is what works for the show. But with romance in particular, the way that it's played as world-endingly huge as if it actually is, and all of these things are real and true, and definitely these kids will end up together, usually with the implication that they'll be together forever, as opposed to this being a big, huge emotion because your kids and emotions are big at that age. It tends to tire me out. Like, it's specifically that whole, and now you'll be together forever because you're childhood friends.
Yeah, I never particularly saw the charm in the whole, the boy picks on the girl because he likes her thing. I think a lot of people think that's cute.
Yeah, no, I mean, no, it's not a good thing.
Yeah, I can see why you wouldn't mind this, because I know that Fumie and Daichi have that kind of dynamic that you really enjoy, Caitlin.
No, it's not about that.
No, but I'm saying, I know you, and I know you like those kind of playfully aggressive, like, matched equals kinds of dynamics. And like, I will give it to it that moment where Daichi really wants to say that he likes her and he says something stupid instead, that felt really earned and real in a way that I think was well written.
Well, and the thing that I think is really, like, interesting and enjoyable about this is that, like, it's not just that Daichi likes Fumie, but also, like, I think he misses being friends with her, right? Mm-hmm. Like, those two, like, they're so similar.
Yeah.
And at least he's canonically emotionally constipated too, so it's not like this is just how boys
like,
are.
And
yeah,
we saw his dad a couple episodes later, right? Like, you start to get a sense of how he became who he is.
Yeah, this tracks.
What's up with dads walking around their houses naked in this show, by the way? That's literally the second dad introduction. I think the first scene every dad gets is the kid being pissed off because he's just walking around naked.
I didn't notice the pattern.
Yeah.
But
I want to see if it holds for future parents.
I didn't think of that.
And like with Yasuko and Haruken, it's very okay, fine.
Yeah. No, that was just sort of like, yeah, okay. The Yasuko and Haruken one is not super interesting to me, but like with Daichi and Fumie, what and like, it's not like this, like, oh, I ship it, oh, it's my OTP,
right?
Like, they're, like I've said before, they're at an age where, like, there starts to be pressure for, like, boys and girls to kind of separate socially because they're being socialized so differently. Mm-hmm. And we don't know what Fumie's family life is like, other than that she doesn't get along very well with her brother. And it seems like she's under a lot of pressure to study. But, like,
I don't know, she also seems very driven, so I think the studying might just be her wanting to succeed too.
That could be it too. But, like, so, like, it's not necessarily just a crush thing, but also that they're sort of starting to separate just because that's what's expected of boys and girls at that age.
Yeah, and you can.
And Daichi is kind of an asshole, and, like, he feels probably like, this is how I'm supposed to act towards a girl now, and now that I see her, not necessarily initiated by him liking her, but him realizing, seeing her as a girl and becoming interested in girls, and it's, you know, like, complicated, and this is all sort of stuff that I've, like, thought about with the character and sort of built up and guessed at, because like I said, my sense in the episode wasn't just that he liked her, but also that he missed getting along with her, and he missed being friends with her, because they get along really well when he's not being a brat.
He's not being himself.
I mean, I think the roots of all of that are there to pick up on it and kind of expand and headcanon on. I think that's fair, and I think, like I said, there are moments where the writing is really strong. I think it gets bogged down a little bit in the tropiness now and then, which is kind of where it stumbles, because it feels like it has to play into like the pigtail pulling stuff.
Right. No, that's fair. And that sort of brings us over to the summer camp episode, also known as what I like to call the battle of the sexes.
One of the less obnoxious
Hurricane.
battle of the sexes episodes that I've seen.
Yeah. Oh, Hurricane's on the girls' team, though, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's like low-key battle of the sexes, right? Like, that's sort of the, because Hurricane did not get caught up in the whole... He's not the kind of personality where he gets caught up in the whole, like, picking on girls phase.
Yeah.
Girls are dumb.
What with the soul-crushing grief and all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's true. Like, I have worked with children like Daichi, and I have been very empathetic to Daichi when discussing this episode, but as a teacher, they are the worst.
You mean the teacher that gets drunk and then goes along for the...
Well, I mean, yes, but I'm like from the perspective, like, I've had kids like Daichi in my class where everything you say, they have like some sort of like smart foul-mouthed remark to respond with, and there's nothing you can do because you can't sink down to their level, and there's really only so much you can do if they don't give a shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And they're probably going to turn out fine, hopefully, but right now, just, God, please stop.
And they are usually, like Daichi, the product of an environment of boys will be boys, toxic masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
They are actually often fairly troubled kids in their home life in some way. But they are still just like, sometimes you just want to strangle them. Oh! But he is a very realistically written child. And I feel like we're talking a lot about Daichi in this, but I feel like this stretch of episodes does spend a lot of time on him.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, very
anyway.
much. And,
yeah.
And like, as far as the male characters go, well, I mean, Denpa's best boy.
Denpa's such a good boy.
He's a good boy. And Hurricane is the kind of character that I just know if I was the intended age for this show, I would have been super into. Hashtag goals.
Yeah.
To be deeply scarred by tragedy and seem deep.
This is a big arc for Daichi because he loses control of it. He was the leader of the antagonist, but then Isako, I think she takes that from him after he fails in the Kana's Diary episode. And then after that, I think it tries to... I mean, it does a little bit... Well, the reason he failed was because of... You see a bit of his more human side, and then it spends the next couple episodes trying to further humanize him, so he can probably end up working with them later on in the series' second half.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, even in just these episodes, he's working, like, he calms down a fair bit in the second half of this stretch. He has some shit, with the goldfish and all.
Yeah. I mean, when he gets to a stronger personality than his, you see him kind of fold. Like, when the bigger villain in Isako arrives, he folds like a chair. And even, oh my god, why do I keep forgetting her name? Kyoko, even when she shows up and basically just calls him poop and won't leave when he tells her to, he doesn't know what to do.
He's just not as, like, tough as he thinks he is or wishes he were.
Yeah, that's how he socializes, so he can't deal with Kyoko because she's better at what he does than he is.
But yeah, like, this episode doesn't really deal in, like, sort of, even though it is a, like, kind of ostensibly boys versus girls thing, like, even though Hurricane is, like, with the girls, like, he's just sort of, like, he doesn't care about all that rivalry shit. He just wants to figure out what happened to Kana, right? Like, he's not, like, caught up in that bullshit, so he's just sort of, like, with them as the default.
Yeah, and
I think...
Like, because his characterization right now is so incredibly tied to Kana, he's a little bit of a cipher right now. Like, he's sad, and he is driven, and he hasn't let Yasuko, and therefore the audience, have much glimpse into any of his other personality traits. Mm-hmm. Which is, fine, and there's a reason to write it that way for narrative reasons, but it also doesn't make him very interesting right now.
Yeah. Although I thought it was really funny when he was going over the quote-unquote real story of Miss Michiko.
I felt...
He's like, what? What's so scary? That's just how the story goes.
I felt for that boy so hard in that moment. Why does nobody want to listen to me detail the various horrible similarities between horror movies? This is very interesting. I felt for that boy.
And you know, it's not, it doesn't have like, oh, the girls are getting scared while the boys tell the scary stories. Everyone like flips at the actual like more terrifying one. It doesn't fall into like and this is like what I think is really interesting about Den-noh Coil from this perspective is sort of the gender dynamics, and specifically the adolescent gender dynamics. Mm-hmm. Because that is sort of an interesting and like evolving time for that to be happening, as opposed to like when you're like 16 or when you're 20 or whatever. Like things are changing when you're adolescent because hormones and all that shit.
Well, and Daichi's character in particular is interesting in a vacuum because, you know, theoretically you see him struggling against this idea that you can't be this kind of stubborn, loudmouth, childish jerk forever, and eventually you have to grow up and actually communicate with other people. Of course, then when you put that in context of real life, it gets depressing really fast because a lot of men like that never ever grow up and continue to be horrible and expect the world, and particularly women, to accommodate them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But, like, in a vacuum, it's an interesting thing that I like what they're doing with it.
Mm-hmm. Poor Aiko, like, is just there. Trying to wing women for her friends. And I really like how the show uses, like, urban legend. Mm-hmm. Because, like, oh, it's summer. Summer's the time to tell ghost stories. So we're going to tell these urban legends to each other. But the urban legends are actually, like, important. Because they have to do with the whole, like, shifting boundaries of reality. Mm-hmm. That are sort of starting to come into play with the plot.
One of the things I felt really hard during this stretch of episodes that really came into its own is the idea of the digital space having no history. You know, the conversation about how old e-spaces are disappearing and being written over and constantly updated for ideal interface, which is, you know, crowding out all of this history and these useful things, which is definitely applicable to how we use the internet now. You know, there are fandom things that I remember and were really impactful in how things work now that just there wasn't a history of them because it wasn't considered important, and so that shit just is gone from the cultural consciousness. Right,
like the review site where I met some people who are incredibly important to me when I was in college, Anime Academy, not the Crunchyroll video series. Peter, you stole that name.
I didn't come up with the name at all.
You didn't pick the name?
I just wrote the episodes, not in brand.
You just wrote the episodes.
Yeah.
Well, whoever named it stole that name.
I wouldn't do you like that.
You stole that name. But it's gone. Like, it's gone.
Yeah, Angel Fire and GeoCities, gone. Mm-hmm.
Have you tried the Wayback Machine?
I mean, yeah.
Shout out to Evan Minto's valiant efforts over at Internet Archive.
Yeah, I mean, stuff like Regretsy that have been truly scrubbed are rare, but...
Mm-hmm. Oh, Regretsy's gone?
Regretsy is completely scrubbed. You cannot get it on the Wayback Machine.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
It sucks.
What?
Mm-hmm. But yeah, like, and even with the Wayback Machine, you can't... Or it is very, very difficult to do general searches. You know, you have to know the specific web page and time period you're looking for.
Yeah. And with some stuff that's introduced in the later episodes that we're going to be talking about that does have a element of maybe existential horror to it as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Or like the stuff that does stick around, it becomes illegals and like illegals are just like are old corrupted code, or metabugs are, and illegals are like old corrupted code, corrupted digital pets, like, so like the things that are not updated become corrupted.
Right.
So yeah, no, that's really interesting.
Yeah, it is, especially with this focus on, you know, this is all augmented reality that the kids are going through, but it's still, you know, a digital space which is the primary means of forming community. So, you know, when stuff is gone, it creates this gap, or even stuff as small as like God, why can I never remember her name? Haruken's sister,
Kana.
Yeah, the fact that Hana was originally part of the detective agency, and
Kana wasn't his sister.
No.
I think she.
His aunt,
his older sister. Yeah, Obachan.
Oh, his aunt.
Yeah. Or does he say san? I don't remember what he calls her. He calls her. It's translated to auntie.
Yeah. Well, yeah. She's his aunt.
Yep.
Yeah, but like the fact that she was part of the detective agency, I don't know. She aged out and is an adult now. She might as well have never had that history. Just stuff like that is interesting and a little bit sad.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it turns into urban legends. And I don't know. Speaking of adults, let's talk a little bit about Miss Maiko in this episode. I like Miss Maiko.
She is doing her best.
She's got that one teacher who's just like, she's just like, oh, even though he wasn't invited, he's here.
I take it this is a not unknown occurrence in the teaching profession.
I mean, he's just like so obviously like in love with her and pursuing her. Unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can sympathize with her because when she's like, I don't want their last memory of summer of 6th grade of them to be of them fighting, because they are friends. She has no patience for that, like, boys versus girls bullshit.
Her subplot did feel a little weird to me, because this series is otherwise pretty emotionally grounded. Like, if this was Azumanga Daioh and it was Miss Yukari getting drunk around her students, that's fine and expected, but it's this show that takes place in a semi-real world where I could expect somebody to maybe call Child Protective Services.
Yeah, I don't know what if that is just a cultural thing, but
like it's such a harmless thing, but it just clashes with how the show has otherwise defined itself.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it is a weird thing to suspend disbelief over in a show that you generally have. You have to suspend disbelief about, certain things, but the characters you generally don't have to. But I like that she's just like, you guys are going to be friends. You guys are going to hang out. You're going to be friends.
You're not
going to like it.
Gonna regret stuff like I maybe did. She is doing her
Adolescents
best.
Be damned. You guys are friends.
It is nice. It's a nice breather. And, it makes sense that it's situated right before things get, begin to get a little more, not quite dark, but melancholy.
And melancholy, let's move on to Kana's diary, which is the most plot-relevant episode, or the most heavily plot-ish episode that we have in this stretch.
I thought the episode, more than anything, I'm kind of wondering, I don't know, I really got the feeling that Isuko's kind of a villain in that scene. Specifically the scene where she finds Haruken passed out on the floor. And I guess he has a history of getting lightheaded and maybe passing out. But she did not know that. So he could have had a seizure or something. And she, literally just steps over him to get this whatever the heck the Michiko thing is supposed to be.
Yeah, no, she's not a nice girl.
Yeah, I mean, like earlier on, it seems like she kind of wants to do her own thing, but in this one, I mean, she's already reused people, but in this, I think that scene more than anything shows how little regard she has for the well-being of other people. Besides that one scene with Kyoko, which is kind of a standout moment.
Kyoko's a little kid.
Yeah, we didn't really talk about it, but the whole duel thing was predicated on Daichi getting the girls glasses, I guess, just so that they couldn't do anything anymore to possibly interfere with her plans, rather than just avoiding them or something like that. But that in and of itself kind of seems cruel as well, considering how not being able to have glasses in this day and age is kind of like trying to, I don't know, it's worse than taking somebody's cell phone. You can't interact with other students on the same level anymore.
Right. And I mean, I think that's a Daikoku city thing, because that's I think the city is unique in at the level of how it's integrated.
Yeah, but it kind of the episode, the one with Kyo, where she saves Kyoko, I think was trying to humanize her a bit, and then they walk it back with this one and show at least how obsessed she is with achieving whatever her goal is.
So do you think it's inconsistent characterization, or is it like the situation was different for her in that moment?
I don't know. They're all kids, right? But I guess Kyoko's especially a kid, and she seems to have sibling issues, so maybe something about Kyoko's plight, or I don't know, maybe it was just the drama of the situation. If somebody's about to fall, there's obviously a death thing there. Maybe she didn't fully appreciate what sort of danger a passed out person could possibly be in. But that seems like a very serious situation, right?
People can be really insensitive about that. I had a friend who dislocated her knee at Anime Expo one year, and she wasn't unconscious, but she was kind of lying on the floor in shock about what had just happened, and there were people stepping over her.
Oh.
At Anime Expo, adults, and since she was in cosplay, she was cosplaying Tifa and practicing a pose and hyperextended her knee, and it popped out of the joint. A couple of people took a picture of her lying there on the floor, injured, while the EMTs were over her.
Oh, yeah, after the medical service already arrived. Yeah, at that point, that's pretty. Yeah.
So
No
people
defense of
can.
that. Yeah.
People can, but I have no doubt that a lot of the people who did that insensitive shit would have helped a 6-year-old who was about to fall potentially to her death. People can be really insensitive about things that look mundane.
And also with Isako, it reads a little bit to me like, a kid's a kid and she hasn't done anything, but Haruken is, quote unquote, an adult, i.e. also 11, very mature. So clearly he can handle himself and she doesn't need to worry about him.
The peak of human maturity they've all achieved at the age of 11.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, the same way that, you wouldn't, in an action movie, you might step over an adult on the ground because in the way of the goal, because fuck it, they're mature, they'll figure out their own shit, which is not true, but...
Which is kind of what she was doing, right? She had her eye on the goal. Mm-hmm. She was trying to get whatever the heck was going on there.
Well, and also...
Getting...
Yeah. And, it's a 2007 anime where people were even less thoughtful, and also 11-year-olds are even less thoughtful than that. So, he's breathing. It's fine.
Someone else will come and help him.
Yeah, probably just asleep or something.
I've got to go get that illegal.
Not a great thing to do, but not actively malicious, I don't think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Morally gray.
Yeah, well, there are laws in California against that now. If you're the only person around, you have to help them. Yeah, you got to help them out.
So, in some places, you can't help because if they get hurt, you could be liable, but in California now you have to help. You're legally obligated to be a good Samaritan.
I think there's I think it's a traffic law, something about like if, not a traffic law, but I feel like there's some sort of situation where somebody's like on the side of the road and they need help, and like if it's one of those things where if the highway's full and there's other people, you're not obligated, but if you're like the only person on the road, like and you just pass them by and something happens to them, that could be considered like you contributing toward the bad thing that happened to them.
Right, like negligence.
Yeah. So they could sue you, or their family could sue you if they die or something like that.
Jeez. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But yeah, we sort of start to get a sense of what is going on with Isako. Kind of, sort of, not really.
And then she kind of vanishes for most of the rest of the episodes, except for visiting her uncle.
Yeah. So yeah, how about sunken Daikoku City, aka Daichi gets a fat fish?
I like that kind. I love I love monster pet episodes. It reminded me a little bit of the style of episode you would get with Pet Shop of Horrors or something like Gremlins. And I'm kind of about that kind of stuff. So I thought that one was fun. It did a lot of really interesting things visually.
Yeah, it's a fun episode, but like, I don't know. I feel like of all of the episodes of the show, if I had to cut an episode, like that one has the least bearing on the narrative. Like,
I mean, it sets precedence for Last Plesiosaur, like narratively, but yeah, it's not
sort of illegals as pets.
I think the only thing you really learn from that may be relevant later is that Harukin's aunt knows the old lady. Oh man, what's her name?
Megaba.
Yeah, Megaba. They have a past because she makes her apologize before she fixes the situation. But yeah, past that, I mean, they do cool animation, kind of a cool concept for an episode, but nothing really important happening past Daichi getting owned. Yeah,
which is always good.
Yep.
Then the one after that is one of my favorite episodes. Daichi grows a beard.
Den-noh Coil does that one episode of Futurama.
I know, pretty much. I was thinking about that while I watched it, where Yasuko, much like Bender, a character she is very similar to, grows a beard. And it's all very heavy-handed adolescence metaphor, but the sight gags are amazing.
Well, then the whole attempting to beneficently play God with a tiny, tiny civilization. It's so not subtle at all, but I'm about it.
Just the shitty mustaches that the boys grow. Like, the girls just get stubble, but these boys get these shitty, wispy mustaches. Yeah.
Poor Dempa got the mouth corners. I don't even know what was that called anything even?
I don't know.
Actually, I think that's a comedy bit. It's either Chinese or Japanese. I don't remember what. There's a famous comedy character that just has the mustache on either side of it. Oh no, it's Mexican, I think. Yeah. There's a famous comedy character that's just got a bit of mustache on either corner of his mouth. Yep. So I was thinking maybe they were trying to
there was also
bring
a
out that
Parks and Recreation joke with that.
Oh, there was.
Ron, have you watched Parks and Recreation?
Yeah.
Ron gets back together with his ex-wife.
Oh yeah, when he goes insane.
Oh, you shaved your mustache.
Yeah.
It wore off.
Yeah. Yes.
Anyway, I've been watching a lot of that show recently as a way of avoiding work. It's very good.
But the whole scenario kind of, I don't know, I guess that means that there can be, because they never gave you any indication that all of the I don't know what the micro-civilization on their faces seem to have sentient life. And So I don't know if they have established that they've created any sort of like sentient AI yet in the series. I haven't heard anybody talk about that at all. I mean, they have pets and stuff, but that's like not necessarily. That's pretty easy to fake, right?
I mean, if you want to get really pretentious and up your own butt, you could argue to a point of philosophical or of philosophy where at what point is just following set patterns indistinguishable from humanity, and what point humanity just going through the motions of a similar routine,
or they're illegals or corruptions of they're corrupted programs, they're corrupted software that could be like what they were originally created as, like some sort of simulation,
sort
of simulation game.
Oh my god, Matrix theory.
And I like how Den-noh Coil sort of handles the question of artificial intelligence.
Yeah, it's not super because its characters are kids. It has the upper hand of not having to have a character who sits and ruminates about the philosophy and ethics of artificial intelligence, which is a bad trap that a lot of sci-fi anime falls into.
I love Detroit Become Human by the excellent David Cage.
I was going to say that. You beat me to it.
I'm sorry.
How dare you? Both of you stolen jokes from me. Podcast is over.
Okay.
If it makes you feel any better, I was thinking of Ergo Proxy.
I mean
that's sort of, or the bad android buddy cop show from a few years ago, like Beyond Human or whatever it was, which also made parallels between androids and black people, I'm pretty sure.
It definitely was not as bad as Detroit Become Human, because I'm not sure if that's possible.
But how? It has so many pixels and therefore many emotions.
Can you press F to pay respects?
You can press X to I Have a Dream.
God damn it.
Yeah, this is better written than that. I just less is more because these stories have been told so often for literal decades.
Yeah.
And I think this show knows that.
Right. And I mean, think about playing The Sims when you were 11. Thinking about your fucking nano pets when you were 11. I was 11 when that was the Tamagotchi was the big thing. I remember my parents would never get me one, but wanting to play with my friends when I was in 6th grade, even as an adult, I get invested when I play in my Sims. On the rare occasions I have time to play The Sims, I'm on the 5th generation of this family now that I've been playing.
Real,
but they're 11. They don't. I play The Sims and I get bummed out when this one that I've been playing for a long time dies, but I know that they are just little bits of data, right? But when I was 11 and when nanopets were this big thing, you don't care, you don't question it, you're attached.
I laughed really hard at the Nietzsche illegal. Super fucking hard.
Oh, yeah.
One of them is saying I'm dead. It's a good joke. And the fact that the visuals scale up to absurdity but not too much. It's not enough to undermine the emotional effect they're going for, but also flying digital warheads.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, when the one, blasts off from her face, and they're just oh, whoa, and then it just turns around. That show has so many. That is, one of the most... This show, in general, has a lot of really great, clever visuals, but that episode is just so, y'all were talking about the fish, but visually the beard episode is one of my favorites.
A triumph.
A triumph. Yeah. Like, that was, honestly, seeing people posting about it on Twitter was what got me to watch Den-noh Coil the first time. Just like, this show looks incredible.
It's a very good episode.
Speaking of good episodes, I'm really good at doing really well with the segues, guys.
We're very proud of you.
I'm doing really well with the segues. The last plesiosaur.
This nice boy did not deserve any of this. He's a good boy.
I did cry actual tears at this one.
May have teared up a little.
Denpa, I was wiping my eyes. Denpa helping this poor illegal that's all alone and is about to lose its home, trying to find its space. I really like Denpa.
He's a good, nice boy, and he is the sort of gentle giant archetype, but I also appreciate that in a show that doesn't shy away from how kids can be shitty, there's not a lot of fat jokes at his expense, either from the characters or narratively. Like, that's
right.
Nice.
And, it makes sense that, the reason that he's friends with Daichi and, the other boys in the Daikoku Heike club or whatever, they're not really hanging out during summer break, but Denpa seems to be really attached to Daichi, because Daichi defended him from some bullies. And it makes sense because, Denpa's the, gentle giant, Daichi's tiny and shitty.
Mm-hmm. Well, and at the same time, he's down for most things, but you also don't get the sense that he's kind of the whiny tag-along that nobody likes.
No, that's Akira, Fumie's little brother.
Yeah. It's just nice because normally he is the sort of character who would fill that role. The one who's kind of a pushover is also...
The Futoshi.
Yeah.
The Futoshi. Oh, Franks. Yeah, Futoshi is a worse version of Denpa.
I wouldn't say he's worse, just people are worse to him. He's the character.
He is
the
worse
world,
written.
The world around that character has made that character a joke, right? So
right, but Denpa's there's no fat jokes at his expense. There's a sense that he is bullied partially probably because he is fat but also because he's really soft spoken. He's kind of weird. He has this special relationship with electronics. So it makes sense that he would attract bullies because of all of those reasons, not just his size.
He's just trying to be a good and helpful boy.
He's so sweet and he's so empathetic. And he's genuinely empathetic. Isako has called out Yasuko, yes, Yasuko's very nice, but there is a little bit of a false note to her empathy. Whereas, Denpa is just so sweet.
Yeah, honestly,
overall.
Of all the mysteries on the show, are of varying degree of interest to me, but the one I'm genuinely really curious about is the fact that he can hear metabugs. I find that really interesting.
Right. I mean, I think it's the characters who are good with electronics is sort of an archetype. He's definitely not the only character like that I've seen, and I've never really seen it explained. Just some people are good with electronics, some people are bad with electronics. It's Hana from Fruits Basket. She can control electric waves, and it's not really explained. That's just sort of.
Mm-hmm. Well, and in Denpa's case, it's kind of mixed with the personality of the squirrel whisperer kind of character.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little bit of Kronk there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But he's so sweet, and that is what gives him this episode a lot of its power, right?
It just something about the relentlessness of it is very it's very much about preservation in the face of progress, tied to this idea of It reminds me of the Something Eternal episode of Utena, honestly. In a very good way. I will say it's a little bit contrived that they happened to start on street construction at right this moment, but it's fine. I'm fine with it. It works.
Listen, sometimes you have to be a little contrived to make things happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but like in general, this idea that when you're a lot of this series so far has used the digital space to play into that childhood idea of, you know, if you're smart enough or if you're daring enough, you can do just about anything. And no, sometimes you can't.
Right. Yeah. There was they could not figure out a way around the way the plesiosaur was programmed. Like, he was a glitch. He was probably a bundle of messy code, probably. That just happened to manifest in a way that at least appeared to be. And like I said, the show does not question whether or not it's actually intelligent or if it is just the appearance of intelligence. But that had like this appearance of intelligence, of self-awareness.
Yeah.
But it would have been such a mess, like trying to go in and trying to figure out pull out the bits of code that would fix the glitch or like make it so that it could go over light spaces. Like sometimes there's just nothing you can do.
And there's a very agonizing undercurrent of this idea that we're causing this creature incredible pain, you know, for this theoretical greater good that we couldn't even deliver.
Right, like it was all for nothing, and like it was just
it's very sad.
Like that. Yeah, no, that like, and you know, that episode definitely like it's it's a really great example of like creating emotional investment in this thing that has only been in the episode in one episode, but
and like to an extent we care about it because we care about Denpa, but even still, like it's sad. It's a good episode.
Yeah. Just absolutely, yeah, no, that is like largely considered to be like one of the best episodes of the show. Not that it's all downhill from anything, but just like that the story told within that episode alone was so powerful.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of a unique feature of this kind of storytelling is that, you know, you have the overall narrative stuff, but then you kind of have that sweet spot between the early episodic stuff and the later more narrative heavy stuff where you can coast on these isolated stories that also have the emotional resonance that you've spent all this time building up.
Right. And I mean, and the world building is like the world, you don't have to waste time on the world building. The world building is all set up. And the characters are set up so you can just get right to this one really beautifully crafted story about this poor illegal that is about to go extinct.
And the idea of whether that's better or worse is existence better or worse if you are all alone without anyone who can understand you. Like, that's heavy shit for a middle schooler show.
Yeah. Like, this is a children's show. I don't know.
The fucking visual trick with the smokestacks is just borderline cheap, but damn you, it's effective.
It was, yeah, like, for some reason, like, there's so many things in this episode that in, like, with lesser storytelling, it would have been cheap, or it would have been cloying. It would have been Violet Evergarden. Throwing in some hot takes this episode, coming in hot.
Parks and Rec, Violet Evergarden, Detroit Become Human. We got everything.
Yep.
But it could have been very cloying, but the story, the way that the story is told has just enough humanity to it that it's just heartbreaking. But yeah, I don't know. Peter, you've been quiet. What do you feel about this episode?
I thought it was pretty good. I guess I'm kind of the type who would want to dwell on stuff like, I guess I'm like looking at these situations and wondering what exactly they're trying to say about illegals and artificial intelligence and this world that's being created. Because like with me, the Beard episode was just like, it turns out there's like almost all of this stuff that they're just playing around with as children could actually be sentient life. Perhaps even like entire communities of sentient life that are just being erased. Like they sort of establish that the illegals try to eat pets because it like is some code that they can latch onto, which is kind of a survival instinct, right? And then the plesiosaur, I don't know quite what they were going with that one, because it was kind of like, did it have some memories, or were there more plesiosaurs before? Did it get all this from like a corrupted code of an old National Geographic episode or something? Kind of hard to say. But I feel like, I don't know if it's trying to tell us that all this stuff is human, and the way that we're just treating it like it's just data might be due to blindnesses to the stuff that we're actually working with. I guess that's kind of how I took that episode.
Mm-hmm. That's definitely not. I never really thought about it that way. But yeah, just because the show deals a lot with pets. So there's people's pets getting lost or dying. And I think there's just a lot of resonance there. I never really thought about it as like,
this
playing with the idea of like intelligence.
This show strikes me as an idea that's not as a show that's not necessarily disinterested in big ideas, but it's only interested in them so far as they affect the lives of the characters that it's following, which is the kind of narrative I prefer. I find that shows like Psychopaths leave me a little bit cold, but it's just a different kind of storytelling where a lot of you're only going to touch at the edges of the big philosophical ideas.
Mm-hmm.
We could talk about how Psychopaths is awful at world building and had a really terrible story and turn as well. That would be another episode.
But it is like the recent series of, here are our characters who are basically ciphers designed to exposit worldviews.
So it's a Genrobuchi anime.
It sure is.
No.
And that's where the comments are coming from.
Boom.
I think we better wrap it up now, because no one is listening anymore. They're all too busy typing angrily.
No, I actually like Genrobuchi.
I do too. Sure mostly like Madoka.
I think Orobuchi's good. Psychopaths is not. Well, I don't know. I don't think he was primary on Psychopaths. It's not. It's honestly, you can skip it. It's super skippable. It's not good.
All right, but this is a good place to kind of wrap up the episode. So any predictions for what's up to come? Anything that we didn't really touch on in this episode or so far that we skipped over that you guys want to talk about and bring up?
I'm hoping that by next time we've mostly moved away from episodic episodes.
Yes. I will tell you that right now. The plot definitely starts kicking in a big way in the next, in the upcoming parts.
Right. Yeah, because the show has definitely reached that point where one-offs are going to have diminishing returns. So that's nice to hear. And I like these characters. I want to see where they're going. Looking forward to. I'm guessing that we still probably won't see too much of Isako. That feels like a last arc thing.
Yeah, she's kind of got her thing, and I assume she is building up towards something that the other characters won't see until it's nearly too late, right? Something like that. Oh, did I get it? Did I get it?
No, I actually make... you guys are lucky. I have a terrible poker face.
Okay.
But,
all right.
But I'm very good at making noises that mean absolutely nothing.
Okay, perfect. Well, I don't really know what to expect. Like, I mean, it's kind of... we hit the turn, but there hasn't really been as much... or like very much that would really indicate to me as to where the series could go next, so I don't really have too many expectations. I'd like for Yasuko to maybe tell Fumie that Daichi has a crush on her so that they could resolve that plot point, because I feel like her not telling her is just going to make those two continue to circle around each other awkwardly. But so if it does that, then maybe next 6 episodes successful, but I trust the rest will be good.
Yeah. All right. So it's all about adolescence, man.
Yeah.
It's like a metaphor and stuff.
Yes, but in a more subtle way that I'm excited to talk about in upcoming episodes. Anyway, I think that wraps us up. That's our episode. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this, check out our website at animefeminist.com if you have not yet. If you really like us, please consider becoming a patron. Even $1 a month adds up and really helps us out. We have broken even recently, but there are things that we would like to be able to start doing for the site that we still need to be working towards, stuff like transcribing our podcasts. So yeah, even $1 a month really helps towards making that possible. You can also follow our Twitter at animefeminist, our Facebook at animefem, and our Tumblr at animefeminist. And now to steal Dee's sign off, because we need one. Thanks, AniFam.